My life began on July 28, 1929, in Southampton, New York, where I was born. My name is Jacqueline Lee Bouvier. I was the eldest daughter of John Bernal Bouvier III and Jeanette Lee Bouvier. In my youth, I was a developing equestrian like my mother, and took an interest in the fine arts and French. I decided to dedicate my college career studying history, art, and French at Vassar College. From there, I participated in a study abroad program which took me to France to develop my deep love for French culture and literature, where I then transferred my senior year to George Washington College, where I graduated with a bachelor's degree in French literature. After college graduation in 1951, I was appointed to the Washington Post-Herald newspaper and dubbed the inquiring camera girl for my eye and ability to write. The following year, I met a lovely gentleman by the name of John F. Kennedy. At that time, he was only a member of the House of Representatives and preparing his campaign for re-election to the U.S. Senate. After our meeting, we developed deep feelings for one another and began dating. Shortly after that, in November of 1952, John and I became engaged. We spent 1 year of planning before the wedding in 1953, and on September 12th, I became Mrs. John F. Kennedy. The next few years were a whirlwind of up and down times for us. John consoled me through the loss of our first child, and I helped him recover from spinal surgery. From that came new beginnings and many moments of bliss. I also helped John publish his first book that year, titled Profiles in Courage, in 1956. The following years were nothing but bliss. John announced his running for re-election to the United States Senate in 1957, and we gave birth to our eldest daughter, Caroline. During the campaign for re-election, I helped John by writing articles and campaigning for him and with him on the statewide campaign trail. After his re-election to the United States Senate in 1960, John decided to announce his candidacy for presidency. I was right alongside him, journaling, taking pictures, and writing articles with our daughter, Caroline. Then, later on that year, I gave birth to our youngest son, John F. Kennedy, Jr. On January 20th, 1960, John had won the race to be president and was sworn into office. From there, I became very involved as the new First Lady of the United States. I helped John appoint members to the White House, as well as develop a foundation to restore the White House for its history. By 1962, my work through making the White House a place of culture, art, and U.S. history was done. I was able to establish the White House Historical Foundation. This foundation made all furniture and belongings in the house property of the United States Smithsonian Museum. This helped the White House be presented to the American people for what it symbolized in our culture. I invited Charles Collingwood to the White House for a televised tour that was planned to air on CBS. I was the first lady to ever do this in U.S. history. This was so that the American public could see what the White House represented and how it became a home that cultivated art, culture, and historic memories of our nation. Later on that year, a tragedy happened in United States history, the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1962, where hundreds of U.S. troops lost their lives. Following the Bay of Pigs invasion came the Cuban Missile Crisis. John was very distressed during this time, very stressed out. Much of the nights and days blended into each other. I tried to console him as best as I possibly could through that hard time as him in the White House, but I promised to stay by his side, help him write speeches to reset the mindset of Americans and calm down the nuclear crisis that was evolving. Later, the following year, in 1963, life came to a screeching halt for John and I. John and I were traveling through Dallas in a Lincoln Continental town car when Lee Harvey Oswald shot my husband. In my pink Chanel suit that was stained with blood, I accompanied my husband to the Dallas Parkland Hospital, where efforts to revive him could not be achieved. After hearing of my late husband's untimely departure, I flew on Air Force One back to the White House to stand by Lyndon B. Johnson as he took the oath to become President of the United States of America. I wanted America to see the tragedy that just ensued and stayed in my blood-stained clothes throughout the downpour of the tragic events that happened that day. I took a major part in planning my late husband's funeral. I wanted him to be remembered with dignity and respect. After planning the funeral, I went on to finish the work he started to develop a repository for his administration's important documents. I was able to supervise the development and production of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum at Massachusetts. After the work was completed, I kept my children out of the public eye and moved into an apartment in Manhattan. In 1968, my brother-in-law, Robert Kennedy, announced his candidacy for presidency. I was thrilled to see another Kennedy take on the duties of the White House, so I joined him and his campaign nationwide. Shortly after his announcement, he was mortally shot and wounded from a gunshot. I feared for the safety of my children and myself, and decided it was in my best interest to marry my longtime friend Aristotle Onassis and move to Greece to help him with his business over there, so me and my children can be protected and safe out of the American public. In 1977, I became a widow once again. After Aristotle died, I moved back to the United States and took a job as a consulting editor at Viking Press in New York. I later switched companies to join the team of Doubleday and became their senior editor. From this point, I began to work on preserving historic U.S. landmarks such as the Grand Central Terminal in New York City. Then, in 1979, Teddy Kennedy, my other brother-in-law, announced his candidacy for presidency against the incumbent Jimmy Carter. Thrilled to see another Kennedy go for the White House, I joined him on the nationwide campaign trail. After the presidential race, I continued my work as an editor in Manhattan, New York. I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 1993 and was told the likelihood of me surviving for a year was unlikely. Jackie Kennedy later succumbed to her illness on May 19, 1994. She is remembered by her remarkable style, grace, and elegance, her work to preserve the White House and make it a part of the American culture, inviting people into the White House to actually see it was done by multiple presidents in the following years. The White House developed the Jackie Kennedy Memorial Garden, where presidents can host some of the world's most powerful and influential diplomats. This was created in honor of Jackie because her love of culture and the nations around the world. Jackie Kennedy ranks as one of the most popular and influential U.S. First Ladies in the American history. In 1999, Jackie was named on Gallup's list of most admired men and women in the 20th century of America.